176 Ordinary Council meeting. I declare this meeting open at 10 a.m. I would like to advise the meeting attendees that this meeting will be webcasted and audio recorded. I also like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we are gathered and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So, councillors, I'm going to go to reflections, so can the gallery please be upstanding and join me. If you only carry one thing through life, let it be hope. Let it be hope that better things are always ahead. Let it be hope that you can get through even the toughest of times. Let it be hope that you are stronger than any challenge that comes your way. Let it be hope that you are exactly where you are meant to be right now and that you are on the path to where you are meant to be. Because during these times, hope will be the very thing that carries you through. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we have no leave of absence to record. Condolences. Do any councillors have a condolence to raise? None being so. So, councillors, please stand with me if you're able to join me for a moment of reflection in honour of those who have gone before us and in support of those who have left behind. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Congratulations. I now open the floor to congratulations requests. Do any councillors have a congratulations request to raise? Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This month marks Greg Nothling's 50 years as a Lion Club's member. He is a Springwood resident, previously a Daisy Hill resident. Greg was born in the Darling Downs and spent 4 years as an Air Force school cadet, then decided on tertiary education as opposed to the forces. He worked as a primary school teacher in a variety of locations over the years, has volunteered as acting secretary for Rugby League and sports associations. He has been employed as a returning officer at several state and federal elections and a tour guide with the Young Australia League, mainly within Australia. He is a member of the Young Australia League, Queensland Youth Council, Blair Athol Bowls Club, Southport Yacht Club, Rochdale Probus Club, plus the Lions. He joined the Brisbane Mansfield Lions Club in August 1970 and transferred to the Rochdale Springwood Lions Club in 1977. Over the years, Greg has been the newsletter editor, president, secretary, membership chairman and Youth of the Year chairman in this club. He has also served as a district convention secretary in 2004, hosted by the club and conducted at the Springwood High School, which was a major international event. At the Lions district level, Greg has served as zone chairman, bulletin editor, hearing action chairman, and on the board of the Lions Camp Duckadang. In 2009, Greg was granted life membership of the Lions Club International and has achieved many awards over the years, including the Melvin Jones Fellowship Award, which is the highest award given to Lions Club members. Greg's wife, Maureen, passed away in 2016, and she was integral in his service to the community through the Lions Club over the many years. So congratulations, please be passed.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to say a big congratulations to Logan Brothers Rugby League Football Club. On the weekend, 3 of their female teams trotted out on the local fields, and of course they're located in Division 2 and are the premier team in the community. But I'd just like to say, for the under-12s who had a bye, so be it. The under-14s went down to Sunnybank, but the under-16s gave a flogging to Albany Creek. And it's tough playing footy, Mr Mayor, but it's even tougher when you're a young woman taking the field. So congratulations to everybody for every week that you go out on that field and you give it your all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Russell.
None for me today, Mr Mayor, thanks.
Councillor Karansky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 31 years to the day after commencing work at the Beenleigh Artisan Distillery, friends, family and colleagues gathered to celebrate John and Sue Mulroney's retirement. Councillor Murphy and I were there, of course, to toast this important milestone. And for those of you who know John and Sue, they've been tireless champions for the distillery, celebrating its historic significance to the City of Logan, harnessing its tourism potential, and of course, producing quality rum, which I can attest to. Many of you will know John and Sue for their tireless support of our community, particularly through the Rotary Club of Beenleigh. Both intend to continue volunteering with Rotary, but in the short term, they're both looking forward to a well-deserved break. And I'd just like to acknowledge them today, Mr Mayor, and thank them for their contribution to the City of Logan and their great work that they've done with the distillery, making it a tourism hotspot in our area.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Councillor Raven. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to congratulate the newly elected members of the Bethania Community Centre board committee. They were elected on the 11th of August through democratic votes. Myself and the Honourable Bert Van Mennen were present during the election. Now, the newly elected President, Lee Mackenzie McKinnon, is looking towards a focus towards providing benefit towards the community, and through a great step has reached out to the Logan Lee Community Centre to hold a meeting with their president and myself to see how both community centres can benefit Logan and provide a better service. And I think this is a great step towards unification of the two community centres. They have two very different demographics, but it's great to see our community centres combining and really pushing the statement that we're all in this together.
Thank you. Councillor Fraser. Councillor Hirameyer.
Not at this time, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bannon.
Not at this time, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stamp.
Not today, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wilcox.
Not at this time, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Further to Councillor Karansky's congratulations, I'd like to extend my congratulations to John and Sue Mulroney on their retirement. John and Sue, if you're listening or watching today, may all your years ahead bring you much joy and relaxations. Thank you from Division 12.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I have one congratulation. This might bring a bit of a smile to your face. I'd like to have congratulations sent to a Mrs. Lynn Power. Lynn Power is retiring from the banking industry as a bank manager who had previously worked for the St George Bank and has been recently been working for the Bank of Queensland. But Miss Lynn Power set up the Logan Community Bank, which of course is the Bendigo Bank subsidiary, and she was the first director of the bank, the Logan Community Bank, setting it up and taking directive from her husband who saw something on TV about this banking opportunity that was happening down south. Miss Lynn Power decided to ring Bendigo Bank and making inquiries about setting up a community bank in Logan. And she, after taking that call, and she was on maternity leave from St George Bank, she set up this opportunity and retired from the St George Bank to work exclusively for this project, not taking any wages at all for about 2 years. set up 4 branches with the help of the Economic Development Board of Logan. And for that, we have a wonderful service out there in the community. So I'd like to have a congratulations sent out to Miss Lynn Power for 30 years of dedication in the banking industry for Logan. Thank you. Okay, having said that, I now have the confirmation of the minutes. I now refer to the minutes of the previous ordinary council meeting. I move that the minutes of the 775th ordinary council meeting held on the 29th of July 2020 be confirmed. Is there a seconder of the motion? Councillor Bradley has seconded the motion. I now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That's been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. Business arising from minutes. We have no business arising from the minutes to consider. So now we get into the committee recommendations. So I now refer to the City Governance Committee held on the 18th of August 2020. Councillor Bradley, Chairperson of the City Governance Committee, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that there are 2 conflicts of interest declared in the City Governance Committee held on the 18th of August 2020, being item 4.1 and 6.1 covering page for confidential report 9.1. Before we move into discussion, do any councillors have any further conflicts of interest they wish to declare? Being none, I will now open the floor to councillors to speak on the recommendations, with the exception of item 4.1 and 6.1 being the covering page for confidential report 9.1. And please note there are 2 confidential reports within this.
Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have rise to speak to item 8.1 in the agenda, which is the local infrastructure projects. And with your indulgence, Mr Mayor, I'd like to share a little bit of a story about this program, because I was actually contacted by a resident last night who had somehow gotten the idea that the administrator had removed this budget and that we had reinstated it, and that's why the rates had gone up, and that there would be no consultation, there would be no accountability, and that councillors would just spend public money willy-nilly without any consideration for what the community would want. And she was most concerned, though, about the transparency and the community consultation. And I know, Mr Mayor, that this policy was actually one of your campaign commitments. You campaigned on it quite hard because you wanted to make sure that this money was spent in the interest of the community, delivering on projects that they needed. And in our time on the IMC, we often heard the administrator say to us that this program was perfect for the rats and mice projects, those little projects that would never get funded through a centrally funded model because they were too small, too local, but still very important to the community. So she wanted to know, this resident wanted to know how the funds had been spent last term. So I said, well, where do you live? I'll go and have a look and I'll find out the project's near you. And Mr Mayor, she lived in Shayla Park, and that's convenient because I know it was your old electorate of Division 10. And so I went and had a look. And one of the things about transparency, Mr Mayor, is it's not just about the information being available, it's about the information being easy to find. So I have a document here that no member of the public can easily access. They'd have to do a right to information request, they'd probably have to pay for it. And this collates all of the expenditure that councillors voted on and the administrator voted on last term for the old Dickett Fund, which we now call LIP. So I'm going to pay it a bit of lip service, if you don't mind, Mr Mayor. So under the administrator's watch, in Div 10 there were 6 projects listed in this, and they're pretty vague, to be honest with you. $100,000 on traffic safety devices, $200,000 on footpaths, $578,000 on footpath projects, reversal of funds from those park projects to give it to Logan Lightning for their clubhouse, and then a surface clean and repaint of some median islands. Now, Mr Mayor, I won't lie to you, the resident was shocked. She's like, how am I meant to know where that money went? And I said, I can't even tell you where that money went, because for me to find out how the staff spent that money, I'd have to put in a number of requests for advice and information. And so I thought it must have been the same for us, though, when we were councillors. So I went back and had a look at what you spent your money on, Mr Mayor. You'll be pleased to know there was 18 projects. No, sorry, 16. No, 18. There was 18 projects, and they varied from things as small as $3,600 for installation of 2 naming signs at Watercrest Reserve Park, Cornubia. That's quite specific, isn't it? All the way up to $300,000 for park projects within Homestead Park and Featherstone Park. And then she asked, but what sort of consultation was done on that? So I told that resident I'd come to council today and I'd ask you, Mr Mayor. Now, there's a project here It's $168,000 for the Chantilly Heights signage and the Chantilly Park embellishments. Would you have done community consultation on that,
We
Mr
even did
Mayor?
a survey on that.
You did a community survey?
Yep.
So you could say that they actually picked the sign themselves through feedback.
Yep.
And with your indulgence, Mr Mayor, I learned almost everything I know about community engagement on projects like this from Councillor Bradley. Councillor Bradley, would you have normally done community engagement when you do a project, and what would that involve?
Am I allowed to speak, Mr Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely on any project, even as minor as a footpath, well, that might seem minor, but I would consult on absolutely everything. And I'd always go with the majority view, and everything is transparent now on social media, and I obviously would post it on social media as well. So, yeah, everything.
And that takes time, Mr Mayor. That's often what slows projects down, is taking the time to talk to our community. I know during the election campaign I knocked over 5,000 doors, and the ideas that I've got for where I would like to see this money spent, noting that it still has to be approved by the director. I can't sign off on this. This policy makes sure that there is a check and the balance, and makes sure that the organisation approves of the spending. But I've got my ideas for where I'd like to see that funding directed from the 5,000 doors I knocked. These aren't my ideas. The community gave me these ideas. Mr Acting CEO, can you tell me, are you aware of any community consultation that the interim administrator did before she assigned any funding?
Given that a lot of that funding came from previous commitments of councillors, and that funding for specific projects as footpaths is always done as well. Apart from that, I'm not aware of any specific individual community consultation.
Thank you, Mr CEO. That's fantastic. So, as you can see, when you get councillors back in the building, we have a very important role. Our role is to listen to community and make sure that when money is spent, it's spent wisely and transparently. And one of the things that we identified through the debate in committee was that the organisation was going to make sure that where we spent this money, where this money was assigned and approved by the organisation, it would be published, so that you don't have to be a councillor to go and find out where the information is hidden. You can be a member of the public who can log on. And Mr CEO, I went looking on Council's award-winning website last night trying to find this information, because the resident didn't actually want me to go at 10 o'clock at night to find the information and give it to her. She was hoping that Council would have published it. But if I can't find it on Council's website, then members of the public can't either. And that's why it's so important that when the procedures that will support this policy come in, that they are backed by good transparency measures, and they make sure that it gives the confidence back to the community. Because one of the things that the interim administrator always told us, Mr Mayor, is that she wanted to restore people's faith in local government. And what better way to do that than to have democratically elected representatives investing in community where the community suggests, in consultation and taking their feedback, and then making sure that everybody can see where that money is spent. Thank you for the support of my colleagues on this project. I know that this policy is near and dear to everyone's heart, and I commend it to the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Just to highlight that, there's also a difference in what happened recently with the sports rorts. They went to marginal seats, and obviously a lot of members missed out on funding in a lot of areas, whereas this goes to every division. Everyone gets the same, so we're all on the equal footing. Any other speakers on this? No? So, Councillor Bradley, you may proceed.
Just highlight, because Division 1 isn't a big focus in terms of growth, Division 1 would not have got any funding, I would imagine, had there not been this LIP program. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I now move the recommendations of the City Governance Committee held on the 18th of August, with the exception of 4.1 and 6.1 be adopted.
And 6.1, did you say?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Bradley has moved the motion. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Lane, or Councillor Wilcox has seconded the motion. I now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you, councillors. That has been carried unanimously. The motion has been carried. So we're up to item 4.1. I now refer to item 4.1 on the recommendations. Councillor Bradley, you have indicated you have a conflict of interest. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. and my apologies today, there are a number of these. Councillor Lisa Bradley, wish to declare a conflict of interest in item 4.1 in accordance with section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009 for the following reason. The report refers to Beenleigh Event Centre, which my partner coordinates, and Beenleigh Town Square, which my partner takes bookings for. My partner's name is Michael Matthews, and he does not benefit or there's no detriment or benefit as per the report. I have considered my position, and I'm firmly of the opinion that the personal interest is not sufficient significance, that it will lead me to making a decision that is contrary to the public interest, and I'll best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole of Council's area by participating in the discussion and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Bradley has declared a conflict of interest. They have indicated they propose to stay and participate in the meeting. In accordance with section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009, you must now decide if Councillor Bradley has a perceived or real conflict of interest. Provide the reason for your decision and also determine if they are free to participate in the meeting while the matter is discussed, including by voting on the matter, or should leave the meeting. Firstly, we will vote on a motion that Councillor Bradley has a perceived conflict of interest. Is there a mover for the motion? There is no mover for the motion. That motion is lost. Now we'll move a motion that Councillor Bradley has a real conflict of interest. Do I have a mover for that motion? That motion has lost. I now move that we now vote on a motion that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest. I put it to the vote. Please raise your hands. Hang on a sec. Okay. Sorry, we'll start again. We need a mover and a seconder for that. So I will ask for a mover for that motion, that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest. Councillor Raven has moved the motion. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Russell has seconded the motion. I now put it to the vote. All those in favour? That is being carried unanimously, so we will continue on now.
Would you like a reason, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor?
please.
Given that the nature of the conflict would cause no detriment nor benefit to the subject of the conflict, and we're only endorsing the actions the organisation has already taken without making a decision, we feel there is no conflict of interest.
Thank you. Thank you. I now open discussion on item 4.1. Do any councillors wish to speak? Councillor Raven wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out specifically in the operational plan that I was first told about the governance framework, which is a project that has been deferred for 5 quarters now. I was first told in March of 2019, prior to administration, that this project would be delivered by the end of the 2019-2020 financial year. 5 quarters later, we've got nothing but excuses for why it hasn't been done yet. So until such time that this organisation can deliver on the governance framework, I will be abstaining from for voting on the operational report, because I feel that we need to deliver on this. It is an important aspect of our organisation and making sure that everything works well behind the scenes so that everything that council does is beyond reproach. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to note for the benefit of the public that on page 6 it refers to 456 new jobs in the city, and there's been an 85% increase in DA inquiries due to the building stimulus package that is currently around. There's been 55 new cameras installed in the city after a $950,000 funding from the federal government. So we have more CCTV cameras around, keeping an eye on our community, and obviously we have staff that recently went on a bit of a tour of the camera room, and it's fantastic to see the partnership with the police in relation to our CCTV cameras. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bradley. You wish to move the motion, Councillor Bradley?
Yeah, unless anyone else wishes to speak.
No, I've already asked. You were the
Okay.
last person.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I now move the recommendation of item 4.1 of the
Thank you.
City Governance Committee be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Stemp has seconded the motion. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried. However, can you please keep your hands raised? So there are 3 councillors who didn't vote against that. Councillor Lane, are you voting against or abstaining?
Abstaining, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Russell, abstaining or voting against?
Oh, I've got my hand up.
She's for.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor.
Councillor Karansky, abstaining or against?
I abstain for the similar reasons to Councillor Raven.
Okay, and Councillor Raven, abstaining or against?
Strongly abstaining.
Okay. Any, Councillor Hall, you got a question to raise about the voting process? No. Okay. Thank you. Councillors, we will keep moving on.
Motion's carried.
Well, that motion was carried. We're now up to item 6.1. I now refer to item 6.1 of the recommendations. Councillor Lane, you have indicated you have a conflict of interest. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, Councillor Teresa Lane, declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to item 6.1 of the City Governance Committee due to the following reason. The property being raised today is rented by a friend of mine and fellow ALP member and is owned by his ex-partner. My property, including a trailer, was stored at the front of the property until last week, and I propose to exclude myself from the meeting while this matter is being debated and the vote is being taken.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. I'll wait for Councillor Lane to exit the building. Thank you. I'll now open it up for discussion on item 6.1. Do any councillors wish to speak? No councillors wish to speak. There being no further speakers, Councillor Bradley, you may proceed.
Mr Mayor, I don't feel comfortable proceeding, if that's okay, in that I voted against this item in committee.
No worries. We'll approach the Deputy. Deputy, would you wish to proceed on this matter? No. Councillor Wilcox? This is item 6.1.
I voted against.
You're the Deputy Chair.
Yep.
Do you wish to put the vote up?
No.
Or do you have an issue with this?
No.
You have an issue with this?
No, I don't. Yes, I do.
So you're going to actually move the motion
No.
on 6.1?
No, I'm not going to move it because I voted against it.
Okay, so you feel uncomfortable as well as Councillor Bradley? Okay, given that, I'll go to the Deputy Mayor to move the motion on 6.1.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's my great pleasure to move item 6.1 be adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Raven has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Murphy has seconded the motion. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. So that motion has carried. However, can you just leave your hands up? Those, Councillor Raven, yep. So that motion has been carried. However, we have people who did not vote for it. So we'll have, Councillor Bradley, did you vote against or abstain?
Against, thank you.
Councillor Herremeyer?
Abstain.
Councillor Wilcox?
Against.
Did I get everyone?
I'm against as well.
You're against as well. Okay, you can put your hands down now. Thank you, councillors. So that motion has been carried. We'll now continue on.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, do Councillor Lane come?
Oh, yep. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I now refer to the City Infrastructure Committee meeting held on the 18th of August 2020. Councillor Lane, Chairperson of the City Infrastructure Committee, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There were no conflicts of interest declared in the committee meeting. Before we move into discussion, do any councillors have any new conflicts of interest to declare on any items? Please advise the item number only at this stage. There being none, I'll now speak to the recommendations. Mr Mayor, preparing for a dry event is paramount for all local governments, and I have a new appreciation for the work undertaken by officers of the Logan Water Alliance. And thank you to Mr Tony Goodhue for his presentation to the committee. The brief to the City Infrastructure Committee was comprehensive and interesting, and while we haven't reached a trigger for water restrictions yet, there is a real need for the community to once again start being water wise, to start saving on water, not leaving taps running and trying to get showers back down to 2 minutes. I was very pleased to hear, Mr Mayor, that Logan residents are doing their part with the second lowest water usage per person per day in the South East Queensland corner at 160 litres per person. Every drop counts, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Any other speakers? None? Okay, thank you, Councillor Lane. You want to put the motion up?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I now move that the recommendations of the City Infrastructure Committee meeting held on the 18th of August 2020 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Bradley has seconded the motion. I now put the motion to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. The motion has been carried. Councillors, we now proceed to the City Planning, Economic Development Environment Committee. I now refer to the City Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting held on the 19th of August 2020. Councillor Raven, Chairperson of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that we still haven't come up with a better acronym for my committee. Mr Mayor, there were conflicts of interest declared on items 5.1 and 6.1 by Councillor Bradley. Do any other councillors have any new conflicts of interest they'd like to declare before I proceed? There being none, I will now speak to the recommendations with the exception of item 5.1 and 6.1, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I note that there is an amendment required to item 4.1. This agenda item concerns a development application for a variation request made by the applicant to vary the effect of the Logan Planning Scheme 2015 in relation to land at 1677 Beanley Road, Underwood, being the Australia Post site, or the old Australia Post site, at Underwood. The development application has been assessed by council officers and a report was submitted and considered as item 4.1 by the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee last week on the 19th of August 2020. The committee voted on and carried a motion for an amended recommendation to approve some of the proposed variations and inclusion of an amended condition 7.16 to require a left-in, left-out intersection to Beanley Road. Following the committee meeting on 19 August, the applicant has given notice under the Planning Act to council on 21 August to stop the clock. The stop the clock provision is a power given by the development assessment rules made by the State Planning Minister under the Planning Act to applicants to stop the assessment of an application by council for a period of time. The council is bound by the notice given by the applicant and must not proceed further with the application until the end of the relevant period or until the notice is withdrawn by the applicant. In relation to this item, the applicant has requested in their notice that the current period be stopped for 10 business days from the 20th of August until the 3rd of September. At the end of this period, the balance of the decision-making process will restart with a decision due by 16 September. The effect of this notice is that despite the report going to the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee on 19 August 2020 and the item being listed on today's agenda, the Council cannot formally decide on the application today. Council officers have sought legal advice on this item to make sure that the Council follows the proper legal process in dealing with this application, and the legal advice received by the officers confirms that the Council today cannot formally resolve to decide the application. It is expected that after the stop the clock period has ended, council officers will present a new report to the City Planning and Economic Development and Environment Committee. Mr Mayor, I now move that the amendment to the recommendation for item 4.1 be not quite as impressive as what I just read, that the item be received.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Raven has moved the amended motion. Is there a seconder to the motion?
I wish to speak on the item, please.
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
You need a seconder.
Yeah, we still need a seconder for the motion. So we haven't got a seconder to the motion. Councillor Murphy has seconded the motion. So I now open the floor. No, does anyone wish to speak? Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In committee, I actually voted against this item. I did state in committee that I did not feel comfortable going against council officers' recommendations. So I just want that noted. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, anyone else wish to speak to the motion? No? Okay, now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried, but not unanimously. Councillor Bradley, you voted against or abstained?
I wish to abstain. I don't know. I didn't know until today that this was happening, but I don't know the details, and I'm just abstaining.
You're abstaining from the vote. So the motion has been carried, and Councillor Bradley has abstained from the vote. Okay, thank you, councillors. I now open the discussion on the balance of the recommendations excluding items 4.1, 5.1 and 6.1. Thank you, Councillor Raven. Do any further councillors wish to speak? No, hang on. I've lost myself here.
It's up for councillor.
Okay, so we've just moved 4.1, haven't we? So Councillor Raven has moved, yep, so we've gone through the process, has been carried, yep, thank you, yep.
Councillor Raven.
So we've moved the motion.
Would you like me to open discussion, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor Raven. You may now proceed with the balance of the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd now like to open discussion on the balance of the recommendations, excluding items 4.1 because we've already voted on it, items 5.1 and 6.1 because we have outstanding conflicts of interest. And before I hand over to my colleagues, I would just like to take a moment to draw the Council's attention to the Food Tourism Development Plan 2020 to 2025. Mr. Mayor, we live in the most multicultural city in the country, if not the world, and all of the wonderful cultures that we have in this city all bring with them their heritage, their beliefs, but most importantly, their delicious food, Mr. Mayor. You and I are both lovers of good food, and we're particularly lovers of food from other parts of the world, and this plan will make it so much easier for members of our community who sometimes do have challenges. They have language barriers and they don't necessarily understand the pathway through council in order to set up either a market, a new restaurant or a pop-up store that would let them share their beautiful food with the rest of the city. This plan will make it easier for our members of the community to share that wealth of knowledge and taste with everybody that would be interested. And I, for one, am very keen to see the Cambodian community in Marsden open up some street stalls in their temple so we can all get down there and enjoy some delicious food. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll hand to the rest of my colleagues to speak to the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In committee, I raised a general business item, and I wish to thank my councillor colleagues for supporting the recommendation requesting a report about Springwood Town Square. It's probably the first time the community really have actually heard that there is a Springwood Town Square that is actually earmarked for Springwood. I would have thought, I did say this in committee, that there would have been something during administration come up about this. Unfortunately, there wasn't. It is one of the 3 items I am lobbying state candidates at the moment, and more will come out in due course, but I'm very much looking forward to this report. I do understand it may not actually physically get up before the state election. However, like I said, I am lobbying state candidates at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Anyone else wish to speak? No? Okay, there being no speakers, Councillor Raven, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I now move that the recommendations of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting held on the 19th of August 2020 with the exceptions of 4.1, 5.1 and 6.1 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Raven has moved the motion. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Stemp has moved the motion, seconded the motion. I now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. The motion has been carried. Well done. Now to the next item, which is city planning item again. I refer to item 5.1 of the recommendations. Councillor Bradley, you have indicated you have a conflict of interest. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, Councillor Lisa Bradley, wish to declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to item 5.1 in accordance with section 175E of Local Government Act 2009 for the following reason. My partner, Michael Matthews, takes bookings for Beenleigh Town Square. He does not receive any gifts or detriment as a result of the report. I've considered my position and firmly of the opinion that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that it will lead me to making a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest, and I'll best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole of the council area by participating in the discussion and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Bradley has declared a conflict of interest. They have indicated they propose to stay and to participate in the meeting. In accordance with Section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009, you must now decide if Councillor Bradley has a perceived or real conflict of interest, provide the reason for the decision, and also determine if they are free to participate in the meeting while the matter is discussed, including by voting on the matter, or should leave the meeting. Firstly, we'll vote on the motion that Councillor Bradley has a perceived conflict of interest. Is there a mover for the motion? There is no mover for the motion, therefore the motion is lost. I now put it that we now vote on the motion that Councillor Bradley has a real conflict of interest. Can I have a mover for this, please? No mover for the motion again, therefore the motion has lost. I'll now put it to the councillors that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest. I put it. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Raven has moved the motion. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Koransky has seconded the motion. I now put it to the vote. All those in favour? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now continue on.
Mr Mayor, would you like a reason?
Yes, please.
As the report is an annual report that we are receiving and endorsing, and no decision that would be made could cause a benefit or a detriment to the subject of the potential conflict of interest. We do not believe there is one.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Thank you. I now open discussion on item 5.1. Do any councillors wish to speak? None being so, there being no, I then ask Councillor Raven, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge the great work of the economic development team in making sure they engage with businesses who are struggling during the challenges of COVID and giving them all the support that council can, and make sure that they can access the stimulus and the support that we endorse through the budget. With that, Mr Mayor, I will now move item 5.1 of the recommendations of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Raven has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Bannon has seconded the motion. I now put the motion to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Well done. The motion has been carried. Okay, City Planning, item 6.1. I now refer to item 6.1 of the recommendations. Councillor Bradley, you have indicated you have a conflict of interest. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, Councillor Lisa Bradley, wish to declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to item 6.1 in accordance with Section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009 for the following reason. My partner, Michael Matthews, coordinates Beenleigh Event Centre. He does not receive any benefit or detriment as a result of the report. I've considered my position and firmly of the opinion that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that it will lead me to making a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest, and I'll best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole of the council area by participating in the discussion and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Bradley has declared a conflict of interest. They've indicated they propose to stay and participate in the meeting. In accordance with Section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009, you must now decide if Councillor Bradley has a perceived or real conflict of interest, provide the reason for your decision, and also determine if they are free to participate in the meeting while the matter is discussed, including by voting on the matter, or should leave the meeting. Firstly, we'll vote on the motion that Councillor Bradley has a perceived conflict of interest. Is there a mover for the motion? There is no mover for the motion. That motion has lost. I now put it up that we will now vote on a motion that Councillor Bradley has a real conflict of interest. Do we have a mover for that motion? No, we don't have a mover for that motion, therefore the motion is lost. Councillors, I now put it that we will now vote on a motion that Councillor Bradley has no conflict of interest. Is there a mover for the motion? Councillor Bannon has moved the motion. Councillor Murphy has seconded the motion. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. The motion has been carried. So we'll now continue on.
Would you like a reason for the...
Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That the report is just a for information report that is being received and no decision is being made.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. I now open the discussion on item 6.1. Do any councillors wish to speak? No councillors wish to speak. No further speakers, so now Councillor Raven, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I now move that item 6.1 of the recommendations of the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Raven has moved the motion. There is a seconder to the motion. Councillor Murphy has seconded the motion. I'll therefore put the motion to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. Thank you.
Just
It's not at my seat. I was not at my seat, Mr Mayor, for that vote.
So, what was it?
She wasn't at her seat for that.
She wasn't there. You weren't there for the vote?
No.
Sorry, I missed that. So I'd just like to put on the record, is there an opportunity for me to ask her how she would have voted? No. The motion's been carried, therefore. We'll just note that Councillor Lane was not here for the vote. Thank you. Councillors, I now refer to the City Lifestyle Committee meeting held on the 19th of August 2020. Councillor Karansky, Chairperson of the City Lifestyle Committee, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There was a conflict of interest declared on item 7.1 in the meeting. Before we move into discussion, do any councillors have any new conflicts of interest they wish to declare on any items? There being none, I'll now speak to the recommendations excluding item 7.1. I note that item 8.1 regarding the Hooning Task Force was recommended to be deferred to today's meeting. The terms of reference for the task force have since been amended. Therefore, I now move a motion as follows, that the amended Hooning Task Force terms of reference be tabled.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. I note that Councillor Karansky has moved the proposed procedural motion. I now put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Do you need a seconder?
No, it's a procedural motion, so therefore there's no seconder. So I now put the procedural motion, sorry. I'll now put the amended motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. The motion has been carried. Councillor Karansky, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I now move a new motion for this report as follows, and I'm hoping the motion will be on the board in front of you soon. 1, that the Hooning Task Force terms of reference as attached to the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 26th of August 2020 be endorsed, and that Councillor Karansky, as the Chairperson of the City Lifestyle Committee, be added as a member of the Hooning Task Force.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Councillor Karansky has moved the amended motion for item 8.1. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Hall has seconded the motion. So now I wish to open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Karansky. You may now proceed with the balance of the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I now open discussions on the balance of the recommendations excluding items 7.1 and 8.1. With your indulgence, Mr Mayor, last week's committee meeting round for the City Lifestyle Committee featured a number of highlights, and I'd just like to spend a few moments, if I may, to comment on some of the reports that were presented. The City Lifestyle Committee of the 19th of August showcased the depth and breadth of the community services that we as a council provide. I'd like to thank my fellow councillors for their robust debate and contribution to last week's committee. I know you're all as passionate as I am about positively enriching the lives and the well-being of the people of Logan. In accordance with Council's Access and Inclusion Plan, we have a focus on supporting people in our community with additional needs, such as ensuring those with disability parking permits can park in spaces provided. My fellow councillors and I have supported an increase in penalty for drivers who park in disability spaces without a permit, which follows on from recent changes made at a state government level. In the sporting arena, councillors were provided an overview of the funding arrangements for the Waterford Rugby League Football Club Clubhouse redevelopment. It's an exciting community infrastructure development, and we're looking forward to working with the state government in relation to the commitment they have made to this project. Our Parks team finalised the local law amendment process, which was a requirement of revitalising the Parks volunteering program. This has been an 18-month process to revitalise the program in conjunction with a highly engaged working group. This is a wonderful opportunity to acknowledge the passionate Parks volunteers in our city and their dedication to caring for our parks. On the creative front, our proposed Logan Art Gallery 2021 exhibition program presented the upcoming 12-month program of works, which features a wide range of works from a number of local artists. And it's aimed at nurturing and supporting the diversity of our artists across the city. Art is so important in terms of preserving our culture and our unique identity, from the incredible Cycles of Change mural on the side of the Logan Art Gallery by Auntie Peggy Tiedemann, and the annual Art Waves student exhibition, which has been running in the city for nearly 30 years. Mr. Mayor, you recently wrote in the Courier Mail, "The City of Logan is a proud and multicultural metropolis where opportunity and adversity can dance together in a unique rhythm." I couldn't agree more. This is often showcased through our events, and I'm delighted that Council has supported the strategic plan for our city's events for the next 5 years, including a view for how events can work in a COVID-safe environment and still bring the community together across sports and the arts. Additionally, exciting plans for our city image identity was presented and endorsed. Finally, as discussed today, the Community Services Branch provided the terms of reference for our Hooning Task Force Advisory Group. Our Hooning Action Group is something the community have been asking about for many councillors for many years, and my fellow councillors and I are passionate about collaborating with the community, Queensland Police, and working with council officers to develop tangible outcomes to address hooning in our city. In particular, I'd like to thank Councillors Heremiah, Fraser, Hall and Murphy for your involvement behind the scenes and contribution thus far to the task force. In conclusion, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the dedicated council officers who've worked in collaboration with the community and councillors to prepare these reports for council and to deliver important services to our residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I now move that the recommendations of the City Lifestyle Committee held on the 19th of August 2020, with the exception of items 7.1 and 8.1, be adopted.
Before you do, I'll ask any other councillors wish to speak to those agenda items. Yes, Councillor Hall.
Yes, I'd just like to speak towards item 6.1. While I was campaigning, this is something that came up quite often. The residents of Division 6 are very passionate about this club. The Demons Club, the Waterford, Meadowbrook Rugby League Clubhouse. It's very important that this go through, and I'm fighting as hard as I can to make sure that it does. 2 councillors before me have tried to make this come into fruition, and unfortunately we're unsuccessful. And I'm hoping that I can do it in my term, and I'm very passionate to fight to make this. This is a very unique, iconic clubhouse, and I'd love to see it go through. It's got a lot of support from the community. It's got a lot of support from our state member, Shannon Fentiman, as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Heremiah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise today to speak on the successful passage of the Hooning Task Force. Illegal hooning is a big issue in our city. I'm proud to say that Council is taking action. A few months ago, I met Anne. Anne's a grandmother, she's a pensioner, and she's lived in our city for over 40 years. Every single night, Anne fears the dangerous hooning in her street. No one in our city should have to sleep in fear. And that's why, when I first came into this place, I brought this important issue to the forefront of our priorities. Today, Council has passed the Hooning Task Force with $250,000 in funding. Logan, your politicians are listening, your politicians are acting, and your politicians are doing what's right. Our city doesn't back down. Our city stands up, we work together, and we get the job done.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hiromai. Any other speakers? No? Being so, I will now hand it back to Councillor Karansky to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might have been a little excited earlier, but I would like to now move the recommendations of the City Lifestyle Committee held on the 19th of August 2020, with the exception of items 7.1 and 8.1 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Is there a second to the motion? Councillor Hall wishes to second the motion. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to mention that I abstained from item 9.1, please.
Okay. Yep. So you may have that recorded. Yep. Thank you, Councillor Stemp. Okay, so now we've on to the next one, which is the City Lifestyle item 7.1. I now refer to item 7.1 of the recommendations. Councillor Stemp, you have indicated you have a conflict of interest. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, Councillor Miriam Stemp, declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to item 7.1 of the City Lifestyle Committee due to the following reason. I am a Logan City Council Parks volunteer, being actively involved in the Cornubia Bush Care Group for some time, and more recently involved in the Cornubia Trail Care Group, as mentioned in the report background and purpose. And this report relates to the amendment of a local law. I've determined that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that will lead me to make a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest. I will best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest and of the whole of the Council's area by participating in the decision and voting on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stemp. Councillor Stemp has declared a conflict of interest. They have indicated they propose to stay and participate in the meeting. In accordance with section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009, you must now decide if Councillor Stemp has a perceived or real conflict of interest, provide the reason for your decision, and also determine if they are free to participate in the meeting while the matter is discussed, including by voting on the matter, or should leave the meeting. So firstly, I will now raise a motion. So would someone please raise a motion that Councillor Stemp has a perceived conflict of interest? Is there a mover for the motion? No, there's no mover, therefore the motion is lost. I now raise that we now vote on a motion that Councillor Stemp has a real conflict of interest. Is there a mover for this? No, therefore that is lost. I now put it that we now vote on the motion that Councillor Stemp has no conflict of interest. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Raven has moved the motion. A seconder is required. Councillor Russell has seconded the motion. I now put the matter to the floor to vote. Could those please raise your hand? That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried that Councillor Stemp has no conflict of interest. Councillor Raven, do you have a reason for that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor, the organisation that Councillor Stemp volunteers for is a government-controlled organisation, and under the legislation that is not deemed to be a conflict of interest. There is no conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Thank you. I now open the discussion on item 7.1. Do any councillors wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I now move that item 7.1 of the recommendations of the City Lifestyle Committee meeting.
I was just going to say there are no speakers. There are no speakers, so Councillor Karansky, you may continue.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I'm very eager today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I now move that item 7.1 of the recommendations of the City Lifestyle Committee meeting be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Councillor Karansky has moved the motion. There is a seconder to the motion. Councillor Lane has seconded the motion. I'll now put the matter to the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Therefore, the motion has been carried. Thank you very much. Okay, councillors, that is our committees. Now I'll refer to council reports. So 9.1 is a request for exemption for tender and quotation Swim Logan. So we have one council report to consider. I now refer to item 9.1. I invite Mr Nick Maguire, the Community Services Manager, to join the discussions before we open discussions on this item? Do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? No conflicts? There being none, I now refer to the Community Services Manager to open discussions. Mr Maguire, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for providing me with the opportunity this morning to be able to present on this particular item as part of the ordinary council meeting. As outlined in the report, council was successful in obtaining a substantial grant from the federal government to deliver a program aimed at improving the swimming skills and increasing water safety awareness among newly arrived migrants and also our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. As per the data in the report, there is a very strong need in our community for this type of program, as per the number of drownings that occur involving people from these different target groups. Based on this, we were very excited to receive advice from the federal government a couple of months ago that this project was successful in receiving funding through their targeted program. This report isn't about the program itself. It is more of a procedural report so that we can progress this particular program as soon as possible. As this program is focused on delivering water education in multiple language, culturally appropriate learn to swim activities, and also a range of other unique activities as outlined in the report, there are limited suppliers who can deliver this service. The local government regulation states that a local government may enter into a contract without first going to quote if council resolves that because of the specialised nature of the service, it would be impractical or disadvantageous to seek quotes, which is the case in this situation. The Aqua English Project Limited and also the Ethnic Communities Council of Queensland Limited are the only identified companies that we have been able to identify after some extensive research who will be able to work in partnership with council to deliver this very specialised service. So on this basis, I'm putting the recommendations forward for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr Maguire. I now put it to the floor for discussion. I've had a couple of hands go up already, so Councillor Raven, you wish to discuss or raise a question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And Nick won't have had the pleasure of being questioned by me on exemptions from tender processes, but as you know from last term, Mr Mayor, whenever we exempt ourselves from tender processes, I just want to make sure that there's a very rigorous and appropriate reason for doing so. I know you've explained that you believe that these are the only businesses that can provide this service, and I'm just struggling with the idea that because there's a lot of people who can provide learn to swim classes, surely they could just have an interpreter with them. Like, how thoroughly have we tested the market?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the team have done some extensive research into the sorts of organisations that deliver this program, and I think it is beyond just having a translator that can also be part of the program, because the people that are in the pool and that are delivering the instructions are those sorts of bilingual educators, and the two organisations that we've included in the report this morning are the only organisations that we've been able to find that can deliver that holistic kind of service.
Thank you very much. That's all I wanted to confirm.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. After having conversations with Mr Maguire about the program through the week, I know that a lot of people might have had concerns about how it was delivered, but coming from a swimming family, and I have coached and been involved in swimming clubs since I was about 5 years old, and as a physical education teacher background, I'm supporting the Swim Logan program and how it will be delivered in our Logan pools. The Swim Logan program will be able to be delivered via a federal government grant that is driving social inclusion through sport and physical activity. It's a program that will benefit our community members and is aimed at improving swimming skills and increasing water safety awareness among newly arrived migrants, refugees and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Swimming is Australia's leading sport, and whilst yes, I know that people in the room may think otherwise, but with over 6 million Australians participating in swimming either regularly or occasionally, we should be encouraging those new community members to participate in this great Australian pastime and provide socially inclusive swimming lessons for them. These programs are designed not to just increase participation in physical activity, but to raise their water awareness and safety and create a sense of belonging into our community. I understand that there are concerns about how the program will run in our Logan pools, and I believe previously these types of programs have been provided and pools were closed to provide these lessons. However, the Swim Logan program occurring in the pools this time, the pools will stay open to the public and other lessons, whilst also integrating these people into our pools and into our swimming lessons. As Councillor Raven stated earlier, We live in a diverse and multicultural city, and living in Queensland, we spend a lot of time near and in and on the water. I believe the more that we provide these lessons to have all of our community members feel included and safe around the water, the better our sense of belonging and familiarity with local aquatic centres and community pools. Let's bring the community together. Let's bring our community together by providing these lessons delivered by the identified suppliers who have those relevant skills and experience. I know I, for one, because I have these skills and I have these experience, there's no way that I could actually physically provide these skills for these newly arrived. So I'm welcoming this, and I'm looking forward to actually getting down there and seeing these lessons and how they're provided. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Any other speakers? Councillor Lane?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Mr Maguire, just a quick question, which is, you said in your submission that several months ago you received notice from the federal government that council was successful for this program. When council applied for the program, did they have in mind people that would deliver the service, and why has it been a couple of months that council's had notice that they've been successful and we're only just getting it today?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Lane, so I think we received notification that we'd been successful for the funding in June. So it's taken that long for us to process the contracts with the federal government and things like that. And as far as pulling the grant together, we worked with a range of different stakeholders across the community to arrive at a position to be able to identify the funding that was required to deliver this program. So it's been approximately 2 months since we received notification from the federal government, and then there is a process that we need to work through in order to sign off on those contracts. And so, which is why we're presenting this item here today, because we are keen to try to progress the program as efficiently as we can.
Thanks very much, Mr Maguire. I think that anything that promotes swim safety amongst our core community and our newly arrived community and our Indigenous community is a great thing, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. I just want to foreshadow that I will be voting against this purely for the process, not the actual application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Any other speakers? Councillor Heremiah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to echo Councillor Wilcox's sentiments about how great this program is. It sounds really good. But our procurement process is about giving all suppliers a fair go, being able to come to council, put your case forward if you can deliver this product for us, and council determines if you're successful, if you're not, but suppliers get a fair go. Now, my initial concern about this is that by granting an exception, we're not giving other suppliers a fair go to put their name forward.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask the council officer if not granting this exception would put the Swim Logan program in any detrimental position.
Through you, Mr Mayor, so not supporting the recommendation would not put the program in a detrimental position, but I believe we consulted with our procurement program in preparing this report, and the procurement process also identifies that if it's impractical or disadvantageous to invite other suppliers who are not in a position to be able to deliver the services, if we invite them to put forward quotes, then it is also considered to be impractical. So from that perspective, we believe that we go out to a range of different suppliers to provide quotes, that essentially those other service providers, given the unique nature of these services, would not be in a position to be able to deliver those services. So it would also be unfair to be asking them to put forward a quote in that situation.
Okay. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for your indulgence. Just when I heard Councillor Heremiah's question, I wanted to bring my business experience to the fore and just ask one more question for Nick to be very clear about something. So if you've already tested the market, Nick, and then you have to go through a farce of a tender process because you know that no one else can deliver the services except for the people you've identified, does that cost council money?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's cost council money in terms of the time it would take to go through that particular process.
The lost productivity and staff time. And then on top of that, council has regular suppliers who would provide other swim services, and they would probably feel obliged to tender, because I know my experience as a business owner was that when I had a good customer that I tended to regularly, I felt that if I stopped tendering when they called for them, that they may not consider me as as favourably in future next time. Now, I know council would never consider that when doing their procurement processes, but it is a concern for business owners that when a tender goes out, there's an expectation that if you're able, you think you might be able to provide that service, that you will do a tender submission, even though you don't actually have the capacity to do it to the standard or to the specifications of the tender. So I just wanted to flag that it is a good program, and I know Councillor Heremiah is not questioning the program, but I think if we're going to save money and be efficient, because you've already assured me that you've done a thorough test of the market, then I'm confident that the ratepayers are being well served by this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Any other speakers? Okay, good. So I am now looking from a mover for the motion for item 9.1, which reads request for exception for tender and quotation swim Logan. Councillor Russell is moving the motion. We have a seconder to the motion. Councillor Wilcox is seconding the motion. I'll now put the motion to the floor for the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, so we've got 3 not voting. So, Councillor Bradley, are you abstaining or voting against?
Against.
Councillor Hall, was it? The voted? You did not vote, did you?
No,
so,
I'm
were you abstaining or against?
I'm abstaining.
And Councillor Heremiah?
Against, Mr Mayor.
Against, okay. So I've got everyone? Okay, so that motion's been carried. So now we go to late reports. We have no late reports to consider. Petitions. Do any councillors have any petitions? No petitions. Consideration of notified motions. We have no notified motions to consider. General business. Now, I'll open general business. Now, we're up to Councillor Karansky. Councillor Karansky, you've got general business.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
Mr Mayor, in your opening address, you spoke on the value of hope. We saw a very important milestone for Logan Village this past week with the official sod turning for a new playground on the Logan Village Green. This $1.6 million project, which included $500,000 worth of federal government funding, marks a significant milestone for the Logan Village families. Mr Mayor, I particularly want to acknowledge Logan Village State School Principal David Cram and School Captains Bradley and Destiny and Vice Captains Mia and Molly, who assisted with the sod turning. Those councillors who attended the Logan Village Forum in 2018 will recall Logan Village State School captains sharing with attendees their hopes and their dreams for the future of the village. I'd also like to acknowledge members of the Logan Village Advisory Group who were present for the sod turning, and in particular the Salvation Army's Penny Goodall, who championed the Place to Play community engagement piece involving local kids having their say in the design of their new playground. Yes, Councillor Raven, I can assure you that the community engagement piece for this project was genuine, and I believe the playground will meet the kids' brief with a variety of options: places to climb, places to swing, places to be on stage, and places to sit quietly and read stories. Finally, Mr Mayor, I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of Council's Economic Development and Sustainability Place Management team, the Parks branch and delivery team for supporting our local children in bringing their dreams to life. And my hope for the future is that the playground will become a much-loved community asset for local children to enjoy for years to come.
Thank you, Councillor Karansky. Councillor Raven? No. Councillor Hall? No. Councillor Fraser?
None, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Heremiah? Councillor Bannon?
I do, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
The reason I have GB is because I missed my opportunity in the Infrastructure Committee for this to talk about the item that I raised. No fault to the chair, it was all mine. I raised an item which was 6.1 in City Infrastructure. There was the Director of Roads and Water Infrastructure be requested to prepare a report to a future City Infrastructure Committee meeting, reviewing potential delivery options for road infrastructure, including an alliance model. Mr Mayor, the reason I raised this is because when I'm out and about in my community, the roads are always the hottest topic. If I do any media about the roads, the comments come through pretty fast. And no disrespect to the organisation at all, but they're not very complimentary. We need to hear what the residents are saying about the roads, and we need to look even harder from design all the way through to delivery with their roads. Especially with the lack of wildlife under and overpasses in our designs, from new roads to the upgrades of existing roads. The main thing we need to remember is that we are spending ratepayers' money on ratepayers' roads. So if the ratepayers aren't happy, then we need to address it first. Hopefully this is the first step in achieving what the ratepayers deserve and expect from the people they chose to represent them. And that is change, and it's change where they think it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bannon. Councillor Stemp?
Not today, Mr Mayor. Sorry, not today, Mr Mayor.
No. Councillor Wilcox?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I have two parts because I, like Councillor Bannon, missed my opportunity to talk in the Infrastructure Committee part just before. But I'll start with my general business. I had a resident who lives on Crest Road who would like to pass on their thanks to Council recently. They have been requesting to Council for quite some time about a road easement at the front of their property that continually washes away and forms a very large rocky gutter out the front of her property, often causing cars to bottom out when entering and leaving her property. Whilst they have been told in the past by council officers that they need to keep the easement in good repair themselves, and never having the grass program work on their easement before, they were pleased to look out their front window this week and find that the easement had been filled in and graded. But it wasn't just completed outside the front of their property, but up and down the whole side of her street, Crest Road, that doesn't have curb and channeling. So she would like to pass on her thanks. That's Veronica. She lives in Crest Road, to personally thank the council for improving the gravel shoulders on Crest Road. And furthermore, I would like to support Councillor Bannon, who brought up in general business 6.1, the City Infrastructure Committee, on the 18th of August, and I'd like to speak to his motion, and apologies for not talking about this before. Essentially, Councillor Bannon and I are concerned that our road priorities list are not in the correct order that our residents want to see and use. We have seen road improvements completed because council believes they are connecting residents, yet they are roads to nowhere because they don't connect to main roads. In Division 11, we have just had Newbeath Road upgraded for a cost of around $17 million to flood-proof the road, and I really hope it does. And there are plans to upgrade the rest of the road, both towards the school and towards Newbeath Forest. But still no appropriate plans for Newbeath Road and Goodna and Old Greenbank Road intersection near the school. Newbeath Road only connects local residents at present to Goodna, Old Greenbank Road and to Pub Lane, and connecting Newbeath Road to Flagstone is still only in the pipeline with no time frame. When I was visiting the Round Mountain Water Reservoir last Friday, you can clearly see that Flagstone is only a stone's throw away from the back of Newbeath. And with further upgrades to Newbeath Road that will be expensive, it still is a road that doesn't connect residents, especially in Flagstone, to a quicker alternative in and out of the division, and is still single carriageway. Flagstone needs a second entry and exit with an appropriate time frame for their safety. When it floods, they become an island, and when there are bushfires on their doorstep, they may need to evacuate quickly, and with the amount of residents living there now, this probably needs to be higher on the priority list for their own safety. We have gravel and dirt roads, no curb, channeling, and single carriageways in our division. Whilst we are not seeking to have all of our roads fixed now by sealing them, we are wanting to have a quicker and safer drive home for our residents. We actually like some of our roads being gravel, and I often travel them and come into work with a very dirty car because I like going and seeing the hidden gems down those roads. But there are some roads within the last 10 years within my division that have had very little or no money spent on them, and for the amount of increased traffic due to PDA development in the division, it's not appropriate and they need to be fixed. My residents are frustrated that they sit in traffic on their drive home, sometimes between 20 and 30 minutes on the Greenbank Arterial to get past the Greenbank State School, and often sit as far back as Caliuta Street Greenbank on Middle Road. By the time you get to the Andrew Road roundabout, you often have people driving on the dirt side between the houses and Middle Road, flicking up dirt and dust, and generally making those of us that have done the right thing and sat in traffic waiting patiently frustrated and very annoyed. Residents are frustrated at hearing that Logan City Council inherited our suburbs and division from Beaudesert Council. It has been well over a decade. Let's all move on and stop using this as an excuse. Residents are frustrated at hearing that we don't have the population to support our roads being upgraded. We do have the population. We are just spread out on acreage blocks that you have to drive through to get our concentrated new development areas. But I am wondering where the figures of population come from. I've received population figures from Pete, and their figures for the residents of Greater Flagstone are sitting at around 9,000 people. Yet figures obtained from Council recently, which refer to the 2016 census, have Greater Flagstone residents sitting at around 2,600. Then, on Logan City Council's website, The Division 11 population estimate is at nearly 24,000 in June 2019. The growth in Division 11 has grown by 4.52%, and the population growth in South East Queensland was only at 2.2%. Our emergency services need a more appropriate road network to get to our residents in need. Would you like to know that an ambulance that is coming to take you or a loved one to hospital is stuck in traffic for 30 minutes? I have personally had this occur twice to my own children who have been sick and in accidents, needing urgent medical care. It would have been quicker for me to meet the ambulance halfway. Or there is an urgent need for a police and they are 30 minutes away. When there are accidents on our road networks in Division 11, it grinds to a halt and our roads are blocked, with the alternatives adding at least an extra hour drive to your drive home. But more recently, it's actually taken 2 to 3 hours going the long way round. So I'm in full support of Councillor Bannon's motion to investigate an alliance model for roads. We need to get our residents moving so they can get to work, school, appointments, home, and not get stuck and held up sitting in traffic for 20 to 30 minutes. And just because as residents, some of us that choose to live on acreage in Division 11, it does not mean that we should have to wait 10 years to get a dual carriageway or an appropriate road network and infrastructure delivered. So let's get our residents moving by improving delivery of roads infrastructure in a timely manner so they can spend more time with their families and loved ones and less time sitting in traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Murphy?
Nothing at this
No.
time.
Councillor Bradley?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As you probably know, on the 12th of September at 1 o'clock will be the official opening of Stage 2 of Underwood Park redevelopment, and I strongly encourage my councillor colleagues to come along and attend. It's probably one of the biggest injections of money into our city that we've had into sporting and community facilities of 11.9 million. The Stage 2 will see a new clubhouse and change room for the Rochdale Rovers Football Club, a community hall and mountain bike storage facilities for the Rats Cycling Club, new kitchen and administration space for the Rochdale Springwood Meals on Wheels. And I just want to note, I have just recently letterboxed myself, physically, letters to the surrounding residents around Nerida Street Community Centre, because obviously part of Council's resolution many years ago was that Nerida Street Community Centre be sold and the proceeds of that go towards the redevelopment of Underwood Park. So that's a very old council resolution. It does not involve the pensioner units in Nerida Street. My concern was the pensioners were not informed about this. They have now been informed, and very much looking forward to the 12th of September. That's assuming everything goes well with all the COVID restrictions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Lane?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My comments are actually, in general business, are geared towards people with a specific genetic sequence in their system, and I apologise to those people that aren't mentioned in here, but Mr Mayor, August is the month that the mighty Rangers of Australia took over our screens in sport, in soapies and of course reality TV. But of all the redheads on our screens, not one was greater in heart and determination than fiery Logan City resident Michael Fisher, who appeared on Australia's Ninja Warrior on Monday the 2nd of August. Michael also appeared in Women's Day magazine in a full article entitled Ginger Ninjas Red Hot and Ready to Win. Mr Mayor, Michael is one of 2 sons born to Narelle and Paul Fisher, 2 kids that I grew up with and went to school with right here in 4114. This year our school cohort were due to turn half a century. Some of us made it, but others didn't. Michael's appearance on the show was a dedication to his dad, Paul, who lost his battle with motor neurone disease in January this year. Michael's determination to get through the course was amazing, and watching from above, I have no doubt that his dad, Paul, was as proud as his mum and his brother were standing on the Ninja Warrior set. Facebook is an amazing tool, Mr Mayor, and I have had the privilege to witness the Fisher family not only deal with Paul's diagnosis and battle MND these past few years, but they became inspirational ambassadors and fundraisers for the disease which takes lives every day in Australia. They have a saying in the Fisher household, and they say it with such gusto. I would love to say it live, but I don't want to get in trouble with the broadcasting, so I'm just going to say this. Support MND research if you can, and in memory of Paul Fisher, I say 621 MND.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Russell?
Not today, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Before I conclude, I just want to make an announcement that we're losing one of our best operators, one of our most loyal servants, Council Officer Susan Hucknall. She's been around for a long, long time. Is Susan here?
She's hiding up the back.
She's hiding
She's at the back. Susan, you're going to be a loss. You've been a great servant of this council and this city. You're part of the original crew with John Overhart, Simon Benham and Chris Lawson. I'm truly going to miss your services here, and I know the city will. I wish you well in your new endeavour, and I'm sure my colleagues share the same words. So well done, Susan, and good luck with your new venture. On with that, I'd like to now conclude the meeting and draw the meeting at an end at 11:25 a.m. Thank you, councillors.
Do you hear Susan?